Hello everyone, Conads from Tower Mill here. This is a video where I'm gonna show you various tips and tricks. Some are related to Fury, venth warrior, and some are more general. Let's. I'm gonna first start by talking about UI, because I see a lot of people who don't understand what's the point of having a good UI. Um, if you think about World of Warcraft, what is the, what do you do basically? At the most basic level, all you're doing is you click a certain amount of buttons. You click buttons on your keyboard and you click with your mouse and you move your mouse around. That's it. Um, Usually it's moving your character around, deciding where to face, and I guess jumping as well. And then it's basically which buttons you're gonna use at the right time. So basically, um, and how do you decide? How do you decide where to move, whether to move or not, which buttons to press? You decide it based on information, right? And that information you primarily get from your screen, from the things you see. Sometimes it's from sound, either from your raid leader saying something, or someone else in your raid saying something, or in-game sound, or you know, yeah. So the point is like you make your decisions based on useful information, and that's where I'm trying to head into. That your UI should only show you information that is useful. Now, what's useful information? It's information that will affect your decision making. For example, knowing that my target is, let's say, below 20%, tells me, well, okay, I can use execute on this target. That's useful information. On the other hand, I see people who have like, dozens of weakauras. Some of them they never look. So, for example, suppose you have a weakora that tells you, or a timer that tells you, hey, your cooldown on rallying cry, you have 2 minutes left, or things like this. Suppose in the middle of the raid, you have these things pop up. Is that in any way useful? Is that going to affect your decision making during the raid? No, obviously not. And what's my problem? There is two things about the UI. One is you need to show useful information. You need to show any information that will help you make decisions better. And the second thing is, which some people might disagree, is do not show useless information. Do not have useless sounds, beeps and bops and stuff, because they distract you. And if you have one or two, whatever, you will learn to ignore them. But some people's UIs they have so much stuff, and then it's dozens of stuff going off on your screen, and many sounds, and it's gonna distract you. And to give you an example to understand that is, imagine you're doing your raid and stuff, and then suddenly you have someone talking to you the whole time. I don't know about politics or something, and or you have someone chatting to you, and you try to respond to them. Like, that's gonna distract you. Even if you try to ignore them, even if you don't respond to them, like it's gonna distract you a bit. So I don't know. I hope that convinces you a bit that you don't want to show useless information. And the more you overdo it with useless information on your screen, the more you'll be distracted. In fact, perhaps one of the most uh, useless things is actually the DPS meters. So many people, I bet, they should be focusing on the rotation or mechanics, and instead they look here. If you take 1 second to look here, that's 1 second that you don't look on your screen. That's 1 second where you're gonna you might die, where you might do your rotation wrong, where things like that. And if you spend like, if you look at the DPS meters, 10 times per minute, 1/6 of your attention goes here. Okay. Now there is a point to DPS meters, but honestly, they show you nothing that logs can't show you anyway. So, in my opinion, they're useless. So, try to have like some discipline to like not look at them during progression um, until you're comfortable with the mechanics and the rotation. I hope all of you have realized that sometimes, oh, I paid too much attention to the DPS meter. I wasn't paying attention to the important stuff, and I screwed up. So that's the first thing. So now the question is, what's useful information? You have to think of that in your own way. In my opinion, like I mean, I haven't played many classes, but for Fury Warrior, for example, I see no point knowing, uh, for example, what's the cooldown remaining on Condemn. I just want to know, like, of my main rotation with like Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Condemn, and Rampage. I don't care to know what's the current cooldown. I just want to know if they're ready. So, for example, this is what I've done here. This um, these weakauras, which I've made myself, they show me when the abilities are on cooldown. So, for example, you see here, if I condemn, it's not gonna show until it's close to off cooldown again. It actually shows it a bit early, but that's the idea. And then, for example, your normal rotation, like the ideal rotation, if you look in guides like Icy Veins, is if you have two charges of Raging Blow, you should do that first. You should prioritize that over Bloodthirst. But if you don't have two, Bloodthirst is the priority. So you see, like, you see how that disappeared, and Bloodthirst. You see how it disappears. I can cast Raging Blow again, as you see, but it doesn't show it. So I mean, this is kind of advanced. I actually have my set of weakauras. I will have it in the description in case any Fury Warriors want them, but I find them really easy because, like, basically, like, at this point, I just cast whatever I see on my screen. That's the rightmost thing. So if I were to attack now, I would do Condemn, then Rampage, Raging Blow, Condemn, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Rampage, Condemn. Oh, I wasn't too fast, but Condemn, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Condemn, Rampage. So you see, I always cast the rightmost ability, or try to cast the rightmost ability that appears. So there's other things, like, for example, I have under my health, I have all my defensives and healing pots. Hellstone is here, and other stuff like that. So, for example, another thing that a lot of people have is the frames where they see the health of everyone. If you have like for example, if you're a warlock, unless you're one of the raid leaders or something, and like for me as a warrior, there's two reasons. You can't see them here, but I have my raid frames here where I see everyone's health. I don't care what I don't care what kind of buffs or debuffs they have. I mean, I might care eventually, like if I rewatch it, because so that I see like who is making mistakes, and then I can maybe help them out. But inside the raid, there's only two reasons I look at it. Is in case someone is dead, to call them out to get a combat res, in case the druids or DKs haven't noticed, and for rally cry. In case maybe usually I know when to rally. We kind of pre-assign them, but sometimes we don't. So Sometimes I will look at that. If everyone is low, I might rally just to like save people. Um, so that's kind of it for UI. Show only things that are meaningful, that are useful. For example, down here I see my cooldowns, my longer cooldowns, just in case. Sometimes I need to look at them, but I don't really care often. The bottom layer I keep it, but it's kind of, you see, it's kind of darkened because I don't care too much to look at these cooldowns. And then off to the side I have a bunch of random utility that I don't really use often, but it's off to the side so it doesn't, it doesn't bother me much. Keep it clean. Like my visibility is pretty much what you see. It's like this whole thing in the raid. Sometimes I have some weakauras here, sometimes I have some weakauras here, but I have plenty of visibility. Don't boggle it up with too many things. So only what's useful, only what's gonna affect your decision making. Um, Only what's gonna remind. For example, if you have a certain weakaura that reminds you, hey, time to hit a defensive or time to move to a certain position, then go ahead. An example, for example, is Stone Legion Generalist. You have a weakaura that tells you where you need to go soak or drop the new reverberating eruption, right? Um, Things like that are useful. Things that having a bunch of weak auras that tell you like for example, as a warrior, having a weak aura that tells you, oh, you have a dot on you. Like I don't care if I'm not low, I kind of don't care, right? Like so yeah, don't you show only what's useful, show only what affects your decision making. Uh, that's one thing. Second thing talked a bit about the rotation. I'll have a link to it for these 5 weak auras, 4 weak auras actually. Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Condemn, and Rampage. Um, Other things to note. Things I've learned. If you go on an NM plus and you attack a target, your abilities have 0 chance to get parried. Doesn't matter if it's a boss. You go on a raid and the bosses can't parry. They have 3% chance to parry your abilities. And I think it's probably the same with auto attack, but no one cares about auto attack. I didn't know that when I started playing again, but there you go. If you're a melee class in the raid against bosses, that's the only case. Maybe in PvP, I don't know. Try to stand behind the boss, or behind the 180 degrees frontal cone, so that you don't get parried. It's 3%. That's 3% DPS, so that's important. Plus, if you have Condemn, you see the Ascent Juggernaut. You know, it won't refresh, and then it's gonna drop. You will likely lose the charges of it, the stacks. Okay, next thing, haste. So let's see. From my gear right now, I have almost 35% haste. Haste reduces your global cooldown. First thing to note, in Shadowlands, your global cooldown cannot go below 0.75 seconds. Now, what this means is that, which is equal to a haste of 100%. So basically, any haste you have above 100%, it doesn't matter. Second thing about haste, how does haste work? At least with warrior, okay? I have 35% haste from gear. Then you have Nadia. You have this thing, it says increases your haste by 20%. Then we have, as a fury, you have Enrage. Increases haste by 15%. And you also have Bloodthirst by 30%. I assume Parry and Fusion is the same. Now, those three things, they are not additive. So, let me go back to here. So here, when the venth thing happens and you get the Euphoria buff, my haste will not be 54.91%. Okay? So, Bloodlust, Enrage, as a Fury Warrior, and the venth Euphoria thing, all those three are multiplicative with your haste from the gear and with each other. So, what does that mean? So you would expect, for example, from Enrage, right? Enrage says 15% haste. You would expect this number to become 50. Well, check it out, it's gonna be more than 50. It's 55. Why is that? Because it adds 15% plus 15% of 34.91. Alright? And then if I have... it's the same thing with Euphoria, but with 20%. So basically, if you want to calculate how much haste you're going to have at any point, you would take your haste, so I have 34.191%, right? That's in percentage, but if you take it as a, I don't know, as an actual number, it's 0.3491. So this is added to your current haste, which is 1. So your actual, let's say, haste number is 1.3491. Now you multiply this number with whatever of the other three you have. So for example, if you have all three, if you have Bloodlust and Enrage and the Euphoria thing, then it's gonna be 1.3491 times 1.15 from Enrage times 1.2 from Euphoria times 1.3 from Bloodlust. Now with my gear, that gives me like, you know, like that's going to give you a number that's roughly 2.4. So in terms of what you would see here is like 140% haste, which is way too much. It's gonna get you way, like you're gonna, like I said, the haste cap, not for gear, but haste cap overall is 100%. So you're essentially wasting haste, okay? So that tells you a bit about how haste works. That tells you about the global cooldown. You can't go below 0.75. So next thing about warrior, something you need to note, and you can check the log, right? I want to show you that the damage of Rampage, let me just cancel all the buffs. Damage of Rampage does not matter whether you have Enrage up before you cast it or whether it's off. Alright? So here we go. Enrage did 770, 900, 1000 and like 1200. And I didn't have Enrage up. Okay? Okay, now I'm gonna try to do bloodthirst until I get an Enrage, and then I'm gonna cast it. I'm gonna try to keep removing the buffs. And you can see, it makes no difference. Maybe it makes a difference to the first one, I don't know. But it doesn't matter much. 850, 1000, 1100, 1200. So, you see, it's roughly the same. Like, if it was actually buffed, this would be up 30%. Like, this would be over 1000, like 1300 and so on, right? That's one tip. So, you know, if your Enrage runs out, like try to always, like when you're like, try to keep using, you know, let me get there. Like Like you see, I managed to get my last Condemn before then Enrage finished, and I had 80, more than 80 raids here. So this, casting it like this, it doesn't matter. Another tip, Condemn without Enrage does about equal damage as Rampage. Condemn with Enrage obviously does quite a bit more. Raging Blow and Bloodthirst do roughly... let's check actually. I think they do like less. I think they do half. Yeah, like Raging Blow and Bloodthirst do roughly half the damage of Rampage and even less from Condemn. Next thing, again, regarding haste. You may have seen videos about spell Q window, I think. Let's go to this add-on. There's this add-on called Advanced Interface Options. You can also access this this thing in a different way. You set this to 400. There's people who say, oh, set it lower. There is absolutely no point doing that. Here's the problem. People look at these. People look at Blizzard's things, and you know you start spamming shit, and like you see how like I'm just gonna spam random. You see how it does like these weird things that are like, what's going on? Which ability did I press? These suck, okay? Even if you have LVI, even if you have whatever. This is another reason I use weakauras. No matter how laggy this seems, trust me, whatever you're pressing is happening. So if you look at the weakauras, if you ignore these and look at the weakauras, it works just fine. So I don't know how I can really prove this to you guys, but it is the case. So people say it feels laggy. It's not. It's not. Even if it feels like that, based on these things, I suggest make weakauras. You don't have to copy mine. If you want something simpler, you can easily make these very simple weakauras where, yeah, they just, yeah. So keep this at 400. Now, there are some videos which claim, oh, you know, if you put it at 400, then, you know, 400 seconds before your global cooldown is over. If for example, if there's 400 milliseconds left, and I click Bloodthirst, and then I click Raging Blow, you know, like 10 milliseconds later, it won't matter because it will cast Bloodthirst anyway, because I was too late. And they suggest the way to do that is to go and add this on every single one of your macros. Do not do that. It's hard to... It would take a while to prove this on this video, but I found like... I used to have it like this. I used to have... first of all, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't really matter. Like I used to have like my Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Condemn, and Rampage. I have a macro for each of them. And I used to have this this CQS thing on all of them. If you have this on a warrior, remove them. Maybe on casters it's useful, but on a warrior it's bad. First of all, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Or rather, it does, but it works anyway. Like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cast Raging Blow, and then I'm gonna cast Condemn. You can look at the rotation, and then quickly cast Bloodthirst. I don't know if you guys could hear that, how fast I switched between them. And this is with a lag tolerance of 400. You see, again, it did Bloodthirst. It was like 400 milliseconds, like when the bar is like here. And I click like here and then here. So, yeah, You don't need the CQS. You, uh, like what the benefit that it supposedly gives you, you have it anyway, as at least as a warrior with your physical abilities. So it's unnecessary. And this is the, but the main problem is if you have it, it makes your rotation faster, slower. So it's difficult to demonstrate this here because what you need to do is, um, okay, so let me go through this. So you see here, like my global cooldown is 1.11. So what you can do is like just spam whirlwind as fast as possible. Spam. You would expect that it would cast every 1.11 seconds. Now, I don't know, it might be the case that on Blizzard servers this actually happens, but on your combat log, it's not gonna show that. It's gonna vary quite a bit. It's gonna vary from like 1 second to like 1.3 seconds. And here's the thing, if you have CQS, it, that time is increased. I think it maybe has to do with something like where you when you have a macro with CQS, it somehow sends the command to Blizzard, and then Blizzard cancels and then waits one tick. I don't know if you guys know, like from Counter-Strike and such, like games have a tick rate. So they maybe execute commands once every, maybe like 64 commands per second or 128 commands per second. It might be like that. It might be that you can't use CQS and cast a new thing at the same time. So I think this is what ends up happening. It always ends up delaying it by a little bit. So okay, to put it more bluntly, if you have CQS on all your macros for your abilities, your global cooldown is increased essentially by 0.02, 0.03 seconds. And you might be like, oh, big deal. Well, it's 2%, 3% DPS. You know what's 2%, 3% DPS? It's how take your weapons, make them 213. That's 3% DPS. You know. So if you have CQS on, remove it from your macros. Okay. You don't lose anything, and you actually gain. Again, if you're a caster, maybe that's not the case, but if you're a Fury Warrior, definitely remove it. If you want to test this yourself, go next to a dummy, face the other way, spam. Yeah, let me be more specific. You just spam like 25 whirlwinds as fast as possible. And then, so you spam 25 whirlwinds with this macro. Then you change the macro to this, spam another 25 whirlwinds. And then you go in the logs and you see like, you find it in the logs, like what was the delay between each whirlwind, and you'll find like I said, if you have CQS on, the delay between each whirlwind will be between 1 second and 1.3 seconds, and the average would be the average delay between them won't be 1.11, it will be higher. Without CQS, it will be roughly this, much closer. It might even be lower than this, That's another tip. Don't use CQS. Now, the other thing is soft caps with haste. What's the idea here? You start with a certain. So the idea with a Fury Warrior is you get Enrage, which is 4 seconds. It's always 4 seconds. Haste doesn't change it. Okay. It's always 4 seconds. And it gives you a damage buff. The main reason that you want as a warrior haste is to have Enrage up as much as possible. And people say there's a soft cap. So if you have no haste, your global cooldown is 1.5 seconds. Alright? So typically, you're gonna get the Enrage from your Rampage. So the idea is you click Rampage, and then you have 4 seconds of Enrage. 1.5 seconds later, you can click another ability, and then you have 2.5 seconds of Enrage left. Then again, the same. You click a second ability, and oh, I guess I'm lagging. Okay, that's unusual. Guess it doesn't matter too much. You click a second ability, and then you have 1 second left. So you can't even click a third ability before. Alright, well, I'm gonna. I didn't expect this to happen. Alright. Okay, that's annoying. Alright, yeah, so my point is like if you have no haste, you can only get Rampage and 2 abilities before your Enrage runs out. Now imagine you get to the point where your global cooldown becomes 1 second. So what does that mean? You have 4 seconds at Enrage when you click Rampage. At 3 seconds of Enrage, you click another one. So that's 1 ability. 2 seconds, you do it again. 1 second, you do it again. 0 seconds, you do it again. So that's 4 abilities. I guess the problem. First of all, it seems like there is some variance with that. So if you have, how can I say, theoretically exactly the right amount of haste to have a 1 second global cooldown, it's not gonna work. You will never get that 4th ability in. One reason is probably the tick rate, and because I don't know, there's a small difference. Now, second reason, which I think most people don't know, so you might think, okay, so I need a bit more. So I need a global cooldown of 0.99. Second reason is when you condemn or raging blow, your raging blow from your main hand hits immediately, your offhand hits later. It's the same with condemn. Rampage is the most obvious because you get 4 hits. They even appear slowly on the log. And this is a thing. This is absolutely a thing. And I've calculated that you need... They generally, like, with Raging Blow and with Rampage, it doesn't matter, right? Because, you know, it refreshes your Enrage anyway, and it doesn't matter. It does the same damage. With Condemn and Raging Blow, though, it does matter. So let's say there is no lag. There's no tick rates, like, you know, let's suppose that theoretically, if you have a 1 second, exactly 1 second global cooldown, you could get 4 extra abilities cast during the Enrage time. Okay? Here's the thing. On the server, the offhand attack for Raging Blow and Condemn, and it's gonna be most of your attacks, you know, like, right? It occurs about 0.1 second later. Maybe a bit more. It also varies a bit. If you look at your logs, it varies a bit. Which means that ideally you need enough haste so that you cast So you cast Rampage, then you're gonna cast 4 more abilities. You ideally want your 4th casted ability after a Rampage to be done when you have about 0.1 seconds left on Enrage. Alright? So I don't know if this is reflected on online DPS tools like the thing that everyone uses. I forget what it's called. I think raid bots. Like I don't know if it includes this in their calculations. Now the short version of this is, you know, get your global cooldown to either like ideally like 0.98. And by the way, when I say 0.98, I mean obviously with Enrage on. So see, mine is 0.97. That's good. It's similar if you get up to higher values. Now my suggestion is, if all of this is too confusing for you, have a haste about 35%, very close to 35%. I'm also, by the way, I'm also gonna include something. I'm gonna include a link to a screenshot kind of that tells you that, you know, if you have 1% haste from your gear, how much haste is that if you get enraged, if you have Euphoria, or if you have Euphoria and Enrage, if you have Bloodlust and Enrage. If you have all three, you're probably overcapped anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I guess yeah. So it shows all of those things. So what if you have 1% haste? How much haste do you get with those 3 buffs? How much haste do you get if you have 20% haste from your gear alone? And I think the sweet spot is around 35% haste. And I'm actually gonna try to demonstrate this to you. I'm gonna pull out my log. Okay, whatever. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get to a rampage. I'm gonna do Rampage, Condemn, Raging Blow, Condemn. Alright? So, okay. So what I want you to see, actually let me just do. Alright. Okay, so you see here, I did my Rampage, Condemn, hit for 3.1k, offhand, hit for 1.8k. And then you see my last Condemn, 3.2k, 1.8k. So you see that both of these Condemn offhands got the mastery buff. Now this was with 34.91 haste, and you know when I'm raised, I have 0.97 seconds on the cooldown. Okay, so let me demonstrate what happens if you reduce it. Let's go like this, and I have. Let's see what my global cooldown is now. 0.98. All right. Now let's see. You can test this yourself if you have. I guess if you have enough gear to alter. So let's see. I'm gonna do exactly the same. I'm gonna get Enrage, Condemn, Raging Blow, Condemn. Let's see what happens to the offhand Condemn. Alright. Just give it a second. Alright, here we go. Ah, fuck. Okay, it crit, but look at this. You see the first Condemn hit for 2.8. Oh, why did it hit only for 2.8? That's weird, but whatever. The offhand hit for 1.6. It crits for 6k, so that's 3 point something for if it was a normal hit. And then the offhand crits for 2.8, which means the normal attack would have been 1.4. And that's much lower than 1.64. Let's do this again, just to double check, okay? I'm gonna keep doing it until I get none of them crit. Alright. Crit again. But you see, same idea. 3.1, 3.1. 1.8, 2.8. So it was 1.4 normal. So you see, even though theoretical, like, you know, I had 0.98 global cooldown, right? So after 4 casts, I should have like more than 0.1 second left over on my Enrage when I hit Condemn and it was sent to the server. But because of this offhand thing, it doesn't happen. I'm gonna do it a third time just to... what the hell, let's do it a third time. Alright, here we go. There you go, new crit, 1.4. This one actually got the mastery buff, because look, without it, it hits for 2.12k. Without the mastery buff from Enrage, it hits for 2.2k and 1.3k. Guess what? 3.2k, so it got the mastery buff, and 1.4k. That's, I'm guessing that's in the right direction. 2.9k, 3.6. Which means without crit it would have been 1.8. You see? That's 4 condemns in a row. Now let me add this back. Let's do this again. Oh, I need to go to the bottom. Okay. You see? Condemn, offhand, almost 4k. That means 2k normal hit. I hope that proves it to you guys. Like, it's gonna work. Yeah, okay. And since, you know, half of your enrages are gonna probably, like, most of your enrages are probably gonna finish in a condemn or a raging blow. So, for just a bit of extra haste, you're getting that extra damage on that offhand. Plus, it's not like your, you know, haste gives you increased damage anyway, right? So, you know, it's not bad. So I would say go for 35% haste. Any more than that, I don't think it gives you a huge benefit, because with 35% you can get 4 hits within an enrage. As you saw with like 34, you can't. If you go higher, then you kind of need to go to 40%, I think. And the benefit of being at 40% is that with Enrage and Euphoria, you can get 5 hits in fully. Anyway, I mean, you can see. You will see in the screen. You will see in the screenshot that I will have linked. But basically, in the screenshot, it has for a certain amount of haste, how many hits can you get, and how much leftover time do you have. Like, the moment you hit your last ability with Enrage, how much time is left in Enrage, and you want that to be at least like 0.1, around 1.15 seconds, so that you make sure that your offhand gets the mastery as well. And you'll see that's roughly 35% haste for your gear, in order to, you know, if you have only Enrage, no Euphoria, no Bloodlust, to get all these hits in. Um, so I talked about CQS. I talked about the haste stuff and the rotation. I told you about ramparts being doesn't matter. Does the same damage whether you have Enrage before or not. I told you about the haste cap at 100%. Um, by the way, this is why all my gear is like I try to be very close to 5% and now have full mastery gems. What else? What else? I only have 450. But yeah, like going forward to 9.1, like I'm just gonna stack mastery. Just mastery, my full mastery, man. It's gonna be sick damage. um, I actually think venth Fury is gonna be one of the best single target DPSers. I haven't checked the bosses at all, but if there's no movement, I mean, you're gonna get an overall your rotation just becomes so much easier and you do so much more damage if you have 100% recklessness uptime. Like if they keep all the classes as they are now, I mean, I don't know if I would do top DPS on Slash Fist, but I think on every other boss, I wouldn't be surprised if Fury was the top DPSer, you know? Like, yeah. Um, yeah, at least damage to boss, single target damage to boss. Yeah, I don't think anything can come close in the current meta. Um, like, let's say you do a simulation on raid bots. I don't think anything will come close with that legendary. And they've nerfed it to 2 seconds, and that's fine. Like, the only thing that managed to do is, since I'm talking about Fury tips and tricks, right? The only thing it does is you have to stick with anger management. If they haven't nerfed, if they hadn't nerfed it to 2 seconds, so with anger management and 2 seconds, if you have 100% uptime on DPSing the boss or whatever, and that doesn't even include like like Euphoria or Bloodlust, which are gonna help even more. But just with 35% haste, if you have 100% uptime, basically when your recklessness runs out, your recklessness will be off cooldown again. So you'll just have to keep clicking recklessness. That's the only difference. Is you have to keep clicking it whenever it's off cooldown. But you basically have 100% uptime during condemn phases. And that's, yeah, plus if you have sudden death, that's, you might extend it a bit more. It's probably the way to go. Probably the way to go. Sudden death. What else? So beforehand, maybe Dragon Roar. Maybe you would. I probably would have played something like this. Cruelty. Yeah. Because the thing is, like, your rotation there. Because your rotation with recklessness, as you guys probably know, is like condemn, raging blow. It's literally just that. Rampage, condemn, raging blow. So what you could do is like rampage, condemn, dragon roar. So you would do rampage, condemn, siege breaker, rampage, condemn, dragon roar, and then you go back to your normal rampage, condemn, raging blow, rampage, condemn, raging blow until siege breaker is off. So, and obviously you just take these two because, well, this one just, this does as much damage as a raging blow, and it gives you a buff for 10 seconds, 15% extra damage. This does, quite a bit more damage. It's equal to a rampage or roughly a condemn. So, yeah, it's just a bit more damage. and you have this on a 30-second cooldown. So this, I think this would have been my build, but now you have to stick to. I don't know if it's gonna be bladestorm or dragon roar, but yeah, you have to stick to anger management. I mean, it depends if you can use two legendaries, if you have to AOE on the fight, because like I'm used to bladestorm now. Anyway, yeah. Go back to Alright, other tips and tricks. Let's go macros. My suggestion is add this to all your main attacks. Start attack in the beginning. I also cast charge. I put this after the actual cast. And I also have this part here. Basically, like if I'm mousing over this guy, I need to be in between. It's gonna attack. Okay, let's say I have this guy. I'm attacking this guy. Right. So normal is gonna attack that guy, but if I mouse over this guy and press bloodthirst, it will attack this guy. This is mainly useful for bloodthirst and condemn, but yeah, I think for raging blow it might be kind of useless, but whatever. It's literally all the same. Here I have condemn and execute, but whatever. I suggest having charge here. I think sometimes you need to be careful not to accidentally charge, but generally it's useful. Generally it's like, you know, you're just spamming. I just have to spam one button here, you know. And if let's say a DK is here, and for some reason he just pulls the mob, I'm just spamming it. If I have charge up, I'm gonna charge to it immediately. You know, I don't have to think about it. So it's more of a question of when not to spam your buttons if you expect something to happen. I don't know. Just a suggestion. Let's see anything more useful. You guys can use this if you don't, but have a macro to cancel bladestorm. This is quite important. Sometimes you want to cancel. By the way, if you typically, like, if you're a single target with a current meta and you get a bladestorm, it's like, let's say I want to do Rampage, then Condemn, and then bladestorm, okay? You generally, you can hear the bladestorm doing the damage, you know, it's like a chick chick sound. You have the rotation which is woo, 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 and then there's a chick chick every time it does damage. I think you can definitely hear 2 of them before you cancel it, or 3. Maybe 3 is the sweet spot, I don't know. Because you need to wait anyway for a global cooldown to reset before you can cast Condemn again. That's a small tip. And you should cancel it if you can Condemn or Rampage and you're on single target. General Mythic Plus, it's nice to use your... ideally you use Condemn and Rampage during the execute phases, and then ideally you would use your bladestorm when the mobs are between 80 and 35%. I don't know if I would wait for that typically, but that just improves things. Let's see, anything else? This macro, if you guys need it, it's just... it just jumps immediately, you don't need to click twice. I'll discuss all your cooldowns at the same time. Doesn't matter. Alright, is there anything else I can think of? I don't know. It's quite a few tips. What else? Another thing, oh, I guess I'll talk about this. Another thing, I see a lot of people, like, they save their cooldowns, like the defensives. I guess this is a general tip. Don't generally save them, you know? Like, when you expect a big damage to come to you, sometimes you might try just using them before, especially on a fear where like it's really good to use Raging Blow, Erase Regeneration, because later like suppose you expect 30k damage to come to you. You use Erase Regeneration, it becomes 20k roughly, okay? And then you do a Bloodthirst, you heal back like an extra 10k. So essentially like a 30k damage became 10k. Like you mitigated a bunch of it and then you healed a bunch of it like very quickly. So it's like you, you essentially negate a very big damage. I'm not gonna talk about spell reflect, but maybe I'll have a link to a page that has all the spell reflects in case you guys don't know it. I think I talked about a few things that I think even like some top players don't know. The things about the global cooldown, how it actually varies a bit between your abilities. The fact that /CQS actually increases your average global cooldown in practice, and it's actually useless on a warrior. It's actually bad. It's not just useless. Like the thing that it supposedly does, like I said earlier, it happens anyway on a warrior. I talked about the offhand, how you need a bit more haste so that you get the full hits within the Enrage window. I don't think many people know these things. The 100% haste cap, or where is it? 100% haste cap or 0.75 seconds global cooldown. It can't go lower than that. I'm gonna talk just briefly about my weakauras. These general ones that I have. Let's go to bloodthirst. So in general, what they do is, you can see here, it will appear when it's off cooldown or when the cooldown is less than 0.75 seconds. And why is it 0.75? I just said why. Because the global cooldown can't go below that. So yeah, that's the first idea. This is the same for all of them, and then they have extra conditions. So if we go here, there's some conditions like, oh, if it's too far, like make it gray. I mean, this is pointless for this one. If it's not usable, so for example, when I'm bladestorming, make it gray, or if I'm not in raids, make it gray. And then there are some more complicated ones. Let's go to this one. So just to also help you guys a bit with how to do weakauras. So how these weakauras work is you set here triggers. And what's a trigger? It basically, so for example, this trigger is like, oh, let's look at an aura. On who? On myself, the player. You can choose here the target or whatever. What do I want to see? A buff. And what am I gonna which buff? Enrage. And then you're like, you activate this trigger when the aura is found. So when I have Enrage, this thing is gonna activate. So what do I say here? It's not. Okay, let's look at 5, 6, and 8, okay? Let's look at 5, 6, and 8. So 5 says, when Raging Blow, okay, has less than 2 charges, okay, that's 6. Wait, is that 6? Wait, let me close this so it doesn't confuse. So that's 5. Okay, so conditions. Let's close this. Okay, here we go. That's 5. So I say when 5 is active, meaning when Raging Blow has less than 2 charges, and then 6 is Bloodthirst is basically off cooldown. Oops, Okay. What the fuck is going on? Okay, I don't know. Okay, so when Raging Blow has less than 2 charges and bladestorm and bloodthirst, I can use bloodthirst. And 8 is false. Let's go to 8. Okay, this says when Pesca says when I don't have recklessness. So if I'm not in recklessness, Enraging Blow has 0 or 1 charge, and Bloodthirst is usable. Then I make the alpha, so 0%, which means I make this thing invisible, right? And if you look at Icy Veins, or whatever the guides, they say your general rotation is like use charging Raging Blow if he has 2 charges, otherwise use Bloodthirst. And this is what this does, for example. So the triggers are basically like, oh, when is this? It's just like, let's say things you want to add, and then you kind of use conditions to modify like when this shows and stuff, which take things from triggers. And this is one condition. So when do I one time, you know, if these are true, I don't want to show this. Let's show. I mean, I can easily show it. You see, I'm gonna use Raging Blow once. It's gonna disappear. And what was one of the conditions? Bloodthirst being off cooldown. So you see, I'm gonna use Raging Blow. Then it's gonna disappear, and then when I use Bloodthirst, because it's gonna be on cooldown, Raging Blow will reappear. You see? It just reappeared. And it disappeared again when Bloodthirst came off cooldown. Anyway, that was pretty long. I hope you guys learned some things. Yeah, thanks for watching.